Welcome to Cedar City, Utah, on the campus of Southern Utah University as familiar foes square off in a dual meet. It's Southern Utah and Boise State as we bring you some college gymnastics here on ESPN+. Hi, everybody. Welcome inside the America First Event Center. Spencer McLaughlin on hand, Maddie McBride right alongside me, getting set to bring you these two teams who have squared off more than a few times, two coaches who have seen each other many a times, and two teams right now, Maddie, that are in very similar stages in their season trying to find their groove.
Yeah, both have had really similar scores throughout the season, both with a 194 score lower, which is uncharacteristic of both teams, both with higher 196s to end off for their last meet coming into this square-off. So it'll be an interesting meet to see play out for both teams.
Southern Utah had a 196.8, Boise State a 196.525. Both teams looking to be in that sort of range. The Broncos on the year on the road to nationals, 32nd in the country. The top 36 qualify for the NCAA regionals at the end of the year. A place that both of these programs expect to be. Southern Utah right on the border right now at number 36. Both coaches very well aware that they have to continue to build with still more than half the season to go. There's a lot of gymnastics still to be played throughout the course of this year, but eventually you have to start stacking up those high scores so that you're comfortably inside that top 36.
100%. And just like you said, there's a lot of season left for these teams to bump out those lower scores to count for their away scores and their home scores. So yeah, lots of season left, lots of ground that they can make up. No need to worry about those 194s as both of these teams are clearly capable of those higher 196s.
Southern Utah comes into this meet for the second time this year here at home inside the AFEC, but the Thunderbirds, the last time they were here, took third in a tri-meet with Utah State and Arizona State. Coach Scotty Bauman was not happy with his team's performance, but they have certainly started to get things going in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you can just tell by watching them that they're getting these lineups, they're getting more comfortable, they're getting their routines under their feet, and things are just becoming a little more consistent. So being at a home crowd, with being at home with a home crowd against a familiar opponent has got to feel good for the Thunderbirds tonight.
These two teams, former members of the MRGC, Southern Utah now in the MPSF, where we're coming to you via overnight, by the way. I mentioned something earlier that was an error on my part, but we are getting set to get things going here in Cedar City. And Southern Utah and Boise State have squared off on more than a few occasions. In two dual meets a year ago, the Thunderbirds and the Broncos split the regular season meetings with the road team, emerging victorious on both occasions. The Thunderbirds went into Extra Mile Arena in Boise and put up a 196.275 to just a 195.7 for the Broncos, but then the Thunderbirds came back home having won 9 consecutive meets here inside the AFEC, a place where they're accustomed to competing at a high level and winning a lot, and Boise State flexed their muscle a little bit by walking away winners here.
Yeah, it's a really impressive thing to do, to come away with wins, especially on away meets, and especially with a foe as formidable as Boise, right? They're a team you definitely want to watch out for, though lower ranked right now. I can see their scores just climbing and climbing throughout the season.
Yeah, Boise State so far this year under the direction of fifth-year head coach Tina Bird, though it is certainly not her first season in Boise with this gymnastics program. She has been on staff for 34 seasons in total, spent 12 years as the co-head coach before being named the full-time head coach in the 2020 season. She's a Boise State gymnast graduate herself back in 1990 and had an outstanding career whilst there. She's had a fantastic coaching career, and she and Coach Bauman know very well what to expect from each other's teams.
Definitely, and I do want to say too that there are not that many familiar faces on SUU's team this year. They do have a younger team, but as we saw from their 196.8 at Iowa, they are more than capable team here, and a lot of the freshmen are definitely delivering, as well as the returners this year.
12 freshmen in this incoming class for Scotty Bauman and the Flippin' Birds, the reigning MRGC champions. That was the last time Boise State came into the America First Event Center here in Cedar City. Put up a respectable score of 196 even, but Southern Utah walked away the conference champions with a 196.875 rather, to claim their first conference championship since they won the WAC in 2010. Now into the MPSF, and Coach Bauman has got nothing but great things to say about the commissioner, Fody Mellis, and the job that that conference does, producing a high quality of athletics across the board in gymnastics and beyond. But for Boise State, they're into the Mountain West after the MRGC teams all went their separate ways. It started with BYU going to the Big 12, Southern Utah to the MPSF, and Utah State and Boise State in the Mountain West. But these teams continue to schedule one another because of the familiarity, the travel logistics, of course, something everyone is really comfortable with, and also an opportunity to compete against an opponent you know is going to bring it every night.
100%, and all of those teams you mentioned, all the previous MRGC competitors are all pretty evenly matched. If anyone was watching the MRGC championships last year, you saw the equality of the scores that were being produced by all these gymnasts. So it's always a good competition when you have those 4 teams together, or any of the 2 together.
So Southern Utah will start in our first rotation on vault. Boise State will be on the bars. The lineups as deemed by the coaches and their staffs, who have all been around for quite a while. A lot of continuity on both sides for these coaching staffs. For Southern Utah, it'll be Ellie Cachola, Nia Randolph, Kennedy McLean, the sophomore, and Mackenzie Kelly, the freshman, in the vault lineup in the 4 slot. Kayla Pardue and Taylor Gohl round things out for Boise State. They'll start with Malia Werlin, a freshman out of Henderson, Nevada, who had a 9.85 last week, matching a career high. She starts things off. Carly Buell will follow. Elena McGovern and Kylie Hamby in the middle. And the veterans Courtney Blackson and Emily Lopez will round things out. Just 9 upperclassmen on this Boise State roster, but many of them play a key role. Blackson and Lopez and a couple others have been in this gym more than a couple of times.
Yeah, Spencer and I were saying in the beginning, those are names we've heard quite a bit throughout the years. So they've been consistent competitors, always producing good routines, and it shows that they're consistently in these lineups.
So we are getting set for our first action of the night. Cachola waiting for the go-ahead over with her vault. Had a 9.85 last week, matching a season high. She's notched it twice this year. The Super 16 was the other time, and the junior seems to just continue getting better and better with all of her gymnastics. Cachola
is a solid competitor, and her vaults, as Spencer mentioned, just keep getting better and better.
And we are underway.
Beautiful vault from Cachola. You see she's a pretty good distance from the vault, just a slight hop on the landing, but with good chest up, it's no wonder she's consistently getting those 9.85s.
So over to the bars we go, and the freshman starts things off. And a common theme for this Boise State team under 5th-year head coach Tina Bird, not afraid to start with true freshmen on any of these apparati.
And she is looking super solid with a Maloney straight to a pack. Now going into her dismount, just a tiny little hop on the landing, but otherwise a solid start to Boise's bar lineup.
Malia Werline gets things off, and back over to the vault we go. Talk about standout freshmen. Nia Randolph, the coaching staff for these Flippin' Birds, do not have enough good things to say about the freshman who has been competing in the all-around every single meet so far this year and is slated to do so once again here tonight. That is no small thing.
It really isn't, and especially to jump right into all-around as a freshman is so impressive, and she's handling it like a champ. It has not seemed to phase her one bit. She is one of the most consistent competitors on this Southern Utah team.
She has had 3 vaults that have notched a 9.8 or above this year. Looking to continue that here tonight back at home for Southern Utah. The second time this year they've competed in front of the home fans here inside the AFEC. Randolph patiently waiting, as everybody is. We have our first score in of the night. Ellie Cachola with a 9.875, a season high for the junior out of Owasso, Oklahoma. So a strong start on the vault for Southern Utah. That's been their second best event so far this year. And Randolph takes off.
Randolph with another good Yurchenko full. She did have a little bit bigger of a hop than Cachola before her, but still a controlled hop, a lot of height. So that should still be a pretty good score for Southern Utah.
Up next on the bars, Carly Buell, another freshman for Boise State, and head coach Tina Bird. Scored a 9.8 last week in the first bars routine of her career. No surprise that she is at the top of the lineup here for the Broncos.
We see another Maloney straight to a bail. Really good handstand there, which is what the judges want to be seeing in all their handstands. Just a little short on that last one. A beautiful double A dismount. Again, just a little over rotation there on the landing, but the Broncos are looking really clean so far.
Malia Werline has a 9.825 in front of her, so a couple of strong scores as expected for these teams looking to hit their mid-season groove. They will meet again next week in Boise at Extra Mile Arena. Up next on the vault for Southern Utah, the sophomore Kennedy McLean, the younger sister of Carly McLean, who is quite frankly one of the best gymnasts to ever come through this program.
I could 100% agree.
Off goes the sophomore.
Beautiful vault from Kennedy, lots of height, and you can see near the end of her vault, she's throwing her arms out to find the landing. That is key to looking for that landing, getting that stick. She didn't quite get it, just a tiny hop, but once she sticks that, it's gonna be just unstoppable. And
when these gymnasts are performing their vaults, how do you try and match the power and amplitude you're trying to generate while also having to stick that landing? How challenging is that?
I mean, it is a challenge, but the more height and the more power you have, the more time you have to find that landing. So as you see Kennedy, you know, she threw her arms out with plenty of time and able to open her hips, find the landing with the chest up. So if you're piked, you might hop forward or hop back with just over rotation energy. She did a great job of opening up her hips, finding that landing.
Elena McGovern, speaking of veterans of this particular matchup between these former MRGC foes, the junior out of Richmond, Kentucky, has had a 9.75 2 straight weeks on the uneven bars.
To the free hip, to a ginger, connected to a bail. That takes a lot of power to make that connection. And she's going into a dismount. Go back full out. Just a small hop forward, but again, great routine. And this is still pretty early on in the season, so they only have up to go, but they're looking really great so far.
The number 2 gymnast scores respectively. Nia Randolph for Southern Utah, a 9.75 and a 9.725 for Carly B. Ewell on the Boise State side. Kennedy McLean has a 9.775, setting the stage for Mackenzie Kelly.
So Mackenzie does a round off, full on pike off, which is a 10.0 start value, which is what you want a lot of in your vault lineup. A Yurchenko full, which we saw Kachola, Randolph, and McLean do, was a 9.95 start value. It was demoted, if you will, to a 9.95 a couple years back, just to encourage more difficulty and more variation in vault lineups. And so Scotty is really happy to have, I think he said at least 3 10.0 start value vaults this year, hoping for 4.
So back over to the bars we go, and Kylie Hamby awaits her turn off a season high last week on the uneven bars. And you see some gymnasts starting in between the bars, some below the low, some below the high. What goes into figuring out what best suits the athlete?
It just depends mostly on what your release move is going to be. So it could be that she's starting from the back because she's doing a Jaeger, which is just a front flip where you recatch the bar in the same direction. The athlete before did a Ginger, and she started in between the bars, and that is a turning release move. So then she's facing it towards the low bar again. So you want to end your release move facing the low bar to then do your connection, which is either a bail or a pack. And it can be a little tough starting from the back because you got to get that good swing. So she did a Ray, and unfortunately just overshot it just a little bit. So then she'll have a second to re-chalk. I believe you have 30 seconds. Re-chalk and usually lift it back up to start over.
That's the first time that she has fallen off the uneven bars this year. She's been a bar specialist for Coach White, delivering a lot of really good scores, all of them 9.8 and above, except for the season opener at Utah when she had a 9.775.
Sometimes falls just happen. Sometimes it's just a fluke, maybe an off night, but that's why you have other competitors behind you to make up for your fall, and that's why lineups are so strategically made, right? So here she is finishing. She clearly has very clean lines. Going into a double A dismount. a step forward there, which will be a 10th deduction, but a strong finish. That takes a lot of mental fortitude to get up after a fall and finish a good routine. So good job to her.
So the Broncos hoping they'll be able to drop Hamby's score, but and this is the thinking with Tina Bird's lineups, and we'll see a couple different rotations here as Kayla Pardue is up on the vault.
Another 10-0 start by Vault. Yurchenko 1.5, so like the Yurchenko full, just with one extra twist, which adds a lot of difficulty because it is a blind landing. But Kayla Pardue competed this last year, is a very consistent vault competitor, and is clearly in this spot in the lineup for a reason because she delivers her 1.5 week after week, and it's beautiful. And
she's certainly one of the most powerful athletes that Southern Utah has in the lineup. But back to Boise State as they turn to Courtney Blackson, the senior, here in the 5 slot with Emily Lopez on deck. Tina Bird's lineups have at least tonight so far, we have tentative lineups for each of the next 3 rotations. We've seen the first one so far, which is of course official. She's been putting the younger competitors at the start and having the more veteran gymnasts compete at the end, and this is certainly why right here she wants to rely on her 2 seniors to deliver routines.
Yes, 100%. And lineups are interesting because it takes certain kinds of gymnasts to be in the beginning and certain types to be at the end, but most are prepared to be anywhere, and I think that's what Tina Bird and Scotty Bauman both are aiming to do with their athletes, to make them flexible in any position in their lineups.
Kayla Pardue notches an even 9.8 on the vault for Southern Utah. She's had 9.8 or above in every vault this season, top 100 nationally. Sophomore continues to be a strong competitor for the Flippin' Birds in that spot. As the Broncos await the beginning, looks like the judges are having a little get-together.
Sometimes you'll see this happening in competitions where judges are conferencing about a certain deduction. I wasn't able to see this closest judge towards me, their score, but sometimes if they're off to a certain extent, they're going to be conferencing about what they saw, what deduction they didn't see, and maybe trying to even it out a little bit.
Well, as it stands with Taylor Goals still to go on the vault for Southern Utah, the Flippin' Birds with a 48.95 on this first rotation and would have to notch above a 9.75 in order to improve upon that score. The Broncos, to avoid Southern Utah taking an early lead on the first rotation at home, have to be able to hit both of these routines here down the stretch.
Yep. Remembering that 6 competitors go up and 5 scores count. So they can drop the lowest score, so as long as everyone else hits their routines, they should be in a safe spot.
And ready to get things going, here goes Courtney Blackson.
Beautiful handstand to start off. Straight to a bail to handstand. She's going to do a huge release move. Just floating over the bar, which is so impressive. Straight into her double A and a stuck landing. First one we've seen of the night. Amazing routine from Blackson.
Oh, the Broncos needed it, and boy, did they get it right there. That was very impressive from Courtney Blackson. The final vault for Southern Utah, Taylor Gull.
So Taylor Gull did a similar vault as we saw before, a round off, full on tuck off, where we saw from Kelly was a pike. Taylor did a tuck, which is a 995 start value. But she stayed in those lines, again, remembering that the closer a gymnast gets to those lines, the higher the amount of deduction. So the further you get, the wider they get. So the judges want to see getting good distance from the vault and staying centered. And Taylor did a great job of that.
And all eyes turn to another senior for the Broncos, Emily Lopez, getting some words of encouragement from her fellow upperclassmen. And there's probably nobody you'd rather have in a big spot like this if you're Boise State, tied for 19th nationally on the uneven bars. And she also has got a perfect 10 to her name. Back when Boise State was in the MRGC, she became the 3rd gymnast in conference history with a perfect 10 on the bars, and the 5th Boise State Bronco to ever do it. And away she goes.
Nice held handstand up there, leaving no question up to the judges. Into a pike Jaeger. You see her toes are just glued together, giving no question to the judges. And here she goes into her dismount. A double A and a stick. Gorgeous routine from Lopez.
And she's following a 9.925 from Courtney Blackson, and Lopez poised for a strong score. Should deliver a very strong first rotation for Boise State. Goal a 9.725, so the Thunderbirds stay at a 48.950 in the first rotation, and Boise State, with those 2 final routines from the seniors, could very well be poised to have the lead. We'll get you those scores and keep you up to date with everything happening. 1 rotation in the books, 3 still to go. More gymnastics coming your way from Cedar City right here on Overnight. Scores from the Broncos seniors give them the lead after the first rotation. 49.2 to 48.95 are scores here inside the AFEC, alongside Maddie McBride, Spencer McLaughlin on hand, just the way Tina Bird drew it up.
Oh, just absolutely incredible routines to finish out the Boise bar rotation. And that's really hard to do following a fall, but they executed their routines nearly perfectly with 9.925 and a 9.95 to finish.
And the 9.925 matches a career mark for Blackson, a 9.95 a season high for Emily Lopez, who's one of the 20 best bar workers in the country at this point in the year. So those two really did an excellent job. And as we take a look at those routines that really stood out, it was Courtney Blackson that got things going for Boise State. After a fall by Kylie Hamby, Blackson was up next, and the senior stepped right up, delivered a strong routine, got a great score, and an outstanding sequence there on the uneven bars for Boise State and the Broncos. And as they go into the second rotation, it certainly has to give them a lot of momentum and confidence across their entire lineup.
Definitely, and I mean, ending with such great routines, especially above the 9.9 mark, gives them a lot of confidence. Even with that fall in there, I think that should give them an extra boost, if you will, because they were able to step up when they needed to, and I think that just sets a good precedent for the rest of the meet.
You know, Boise State has been in this gym many times before. They know what it takes to win here in front of what is once again a great crowd here in Cedar City. Southern Utah with a 48.95, a solid first rotation for the Flippin' Birds and head coach Scotty Bauman, but certainly as they move over to the bars, always looking to get above that 49 threshold and above.
Yes, just like Spencer said, getting above the 49 mark is what these coaches are aiming for, and they were just shy on vault at a 48.95, but that's in no means a bad vault score, but they're hoping to get, I believe, in that 49 to 49.3 range for the bar rotation.
Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of those routines that stood out in that first rotation and take you right up to the second. More coming your way in C9. Third time that Lopez has notched a 9.9 this season, but Courtney Blackson after the fall really stepped up, and as we take a look at that routine, she really looked to be on her game tonight. Oh,
you could tell just from her first handstand that she meant business, and she did this insane release move, not one that you see very often in the NCAA. As you watch, just see how she flies over the high bar. Oh, we're looking at her dismount right now, but you can see her landing. Her heels hold together for 1 second before she finishes, which is a new rule this year across the NCAA. Gymnasts have to hold their landing, click their heels together, and then finish. And here we see Ellie Cachola as well. Same thing, her heels are glued together, holding for 1 gymnastics right before she finishes. An excellent vault from Cachola. That's a picture-perfect Yurchenko full.
Cachola led the way with a 9.875 for Southern Utah in that first rotation. The Thunderbirds are on the bars. The Broncos are over on the vault for rotation number 2 as we get set to begin. And Sydney Coe, the younger sister of 2 former Thunderbirds, up for Boise State over on the vault. Southern Utah will begin with the freshman Brinley Christensen over on the uneven bars. And off goes Sydney Coe.
Starting with a strong Yurchenko full, you saw she got off the vault. She had that moment of pause where she set up for her full. That's just really great technique. She did have a pretty good hop on that landing, but it was in control. A good start for the Bronco vault team.
Christensen, the in-state product out of South Jordan, Utah, and Providence Hall High School. Getting set to start off the second rotation for Southern Utah.
Similar to Boise, starting off with some freshmen in the lineup, going into a pike Jaeger. That was a pretty good reach on that, but a good Jaeger. Into a toe-on handstand to a bail. So all bars routines require that high to low transition that we saw. Little shy on that last handstand. She almost had that stick. You could see her holding it for just a second, but took that step backwards. But a good start for the Thunderbird bar rotation.
Elena McGovern is up next for Boise State over on the vault. Has already competed once tonight on the bars, and McGovern notched a 9.775 with her bars routine and gets ready for rotation number 2.
Another Yurchenko full from Boise. Just a little hop, you can see just a little bit to the side, but great distance, great height. Another good Yurchenko full.
And what do you think is causing those hops forward for Boise State on their first 2 vault routines?
So that hop backwards, just a lot of power. And again, like I said, sticking that landing is really hard when you have a lot of power, but it also helps when you get that height. So just excess of power, and they might have just piked a little bit in their hips, so they weren't fully straight open to get that landing, which can cause a hop backwards.
Well, Coach Bird and Coach Bauman have gone up against each other many a times, and they have something in common tonight, both on the bars rotation, starting a couple of true freshmen at the top of the lineup. As there you take a look at Alex Routsis, who is about as relaxed as you can be.
Yeah, she's just swaying over there, dancing. It can be really intimidating to start a college lineup as a freshman, where the college competitive scene is a lot different from club, but these freshmen have been doing it well, as evidenced by their spot in these lineups. Starting with a really beautiful Maloney to a bail to handstand. A nice held handstand. And then she goes straight into a double A, which is really difficult out of just a handstand without any giants, but she did a great job. Just that small, tiny hop forward, but a great routine from Routsis.
The first score on bars for Southern Utah, 9.75 from Brynlee Christensen, the same score she notched a week ago. In the highest score of the season for Southern Utah, Sydney Coe began the second rotation for Boise State with a 9.725. McGovern with an identical score, and that is a look at Adriana Pop.
Pop did a really unique vault that, again, is fairly common in the NCAA, but you haven't seen tonight. And if you were watching, she just opened a little bit early. She clearly had plenty of power and height. She was just spotting that landing a little too early, which caused her knees to buckle and to step forward a little bit. So uncharacteristic from Pop. I've seen a lot of really good vaults from her. So nothing to worry about for the Broncos.
Well, the freshman lineup continues for Southern Utah on the bars as Nia Randolph steps up, and Scotty Bauman has got a lot of praiseworthy things to say about the freshman, and understandably so. She comes into this week top 100 in the country in the all-around reigning MPSF Gymnast of the Week. She's had that award a couple of times already this season. She's slated to do the all-around again here tonight, but what he likes most about this young gymnast is the way that she remains poised and calm, never gets too high and never gets too low.
And honestly, that's really key in a gymnastics meet. You see these gymnasts running from event to event with like 2-minute transition in between, quick 4-minute touches. You really have to be solid and centered mentally in order to perform physically. Even though they've practiced over and over and over in the gym, this competitive environment is still different from the gym. So you've got to be solid and centered in order to excel. She goes free hip to a Shaposhnikova, which is beautifully done. Dismount, tiny little hop, but again, the difficulty of going into a double A dismount just from that handstand is insane, and she did it so well, just like Christensen did.
Well, you saw Southern Utah assistant coach Jeff Richards kind of work his way underneath the apparatus there. It seemed like while Randolph was in the middle of her routine, And it looks like they're making some alterations to the bar. This is the vault of Alyssa Vulage for the Broncos.
She did a similar vault to some of the Thunderbirds, the full-on pike off. Again, another 10-0 start value vault. She got into the vault pretty well. It was a little crunchy, which is kind of a gymnastics term for getting into the vault. And just a slight hop to the side and back. But again, a 10-0 start value has an advantage where you get that extra half-tenth to start out with.
Well, the vault has been one of the two more troublesome areas for Boise State this year. They're ranked 42nd in the country. They're yet to eclipse 49 or above this year on the vault. But I want to go back to Coach Richards being, it looked like pretty close to Nia Randolph in the middle of that routine. Is that a common thing that you'll see coaches do?
Yes, it's mostly for safety. You probably saw him in between as she was doing her release move from low to high as well as high to low. Just to be there in case anything goes wrong, to catch the gymnast. That's really the big part of it. And some gymnasts don't have the coach there. It really is just a personal preference.
So up steps Bella Neff, who has thrice notched a 9.875 this year, including last week. She has been a stalwart on the bars, 9.85 or above with every routine this season. That is really impressive.
Look at those lines. I'm like getting the chills watching her. It's just so gorgeous. Her toe point is just extended all the way to the end. Even as she passes the low bar, just a tiny step forward on the dismount. Really nothing else wrong with that routine, if you ask me. It was just gorgeously delivered from Neff tonight.
No surprise that she's top 35 nationally on bars this year. Emily Lopez had the 9.95 bars routine. That's the highest individual score we've seen tonight. And here she goes on her vault.
A nice Yurchenko full. Again, a hop backwards. And she might get a deduction. It didn't look like she held that landing for that full second. So the deduction goes, you have to hold the landing for a second for the half-tenth. Get your heels together for the other half-tenth. So it could be up to a whole 10th deduction, depending on what the judges see.
Well, so far, the lineup of scores for the Broncos on vault: 9.725, 9.725, 9.5, and 9.7. For Southern Utah on the bars, 9.75, 9.7, and 9.85. We're waiting to see what the judges officially award Bella Neff, but Nia Randolph leading the way on the bars once again.
And coaches will, again, strategically make these lineups. You see already with the Thunderbirds, the scores steadily increasing as you go along. As the gymnasts get more and more consistent in those routines and all 5 of them hit, it really sets up those last gymnasts to get high scores. This
is Trista Goodman for Southern Utah.
Huge pike Jaeger from Trista. And she's going into a really dynamic pack. Looks like she missed that pirouette, but she's trying again. Gets it over on the second try. Into a blind full double back dismount. A little bit of a stumble on the landing, but a hit routine. Missing that pirouette isn't what you're shooting for, but again, those mistakes happen, but it's just sticking with it, finishing out the routine is what counts at this point.
Courtney Blackson was in the 5 slot on the first rotation. She is in the 6th and final position for Coach Bird here in rotation number 2.
Oh my gosh. That was so good. A 1.5 stuck, held, feet close together. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a perfect score. That was picture perfect 1.5 on vault. If you can't tell, I am very excited about this.
She does have a perfect 10 on vault to her name.
These are the kinds of routines you watch as a gymnast and just get full body chills. It was that good.
That was the cleanest landing that we have seen from any gymnast in either event so far tonight.
Oh yeah, and to do it on that 1.5 vault where I mentioned before you have that blind landing is so impressive. And she did it flawlessly. I saw her warm one up that was almost exactly like that. So you know that she hits that on a consistent basis.
Oh, we will eagerly await that score. It looks like it's a 9.95 for Courtney Blackson. Still a heck of a score. for the routine 3 event performer for the Broncos. And speaking of a 3 event performer, Aubrey Schwartz, just doing the bars here tonight, has had some difficulties this season, and the coaching staff trying to take the pressure off a little bit and just having her work on bars where she has remained really good this year.
She did a hop grip into a Jaeger, nailing those handstands. And Aubrey just has really clean lines. You don't see her legs separate hardly at all, which is something the judges are looking for. And she did cast over, so she was shooting for that handstand, just overshot it a little bit. Something I would dare say most gymnasts have done. I personally did it once. And that's just shooting for perfection. Sometimes it can just go a little far. Here she was again, still gets a handstand on the second try. And she has a unique dismount. A front giant into a 1.5, which is pretty unique. And she finished strong on that routine.
Well, that wraps things up for the second rotation, and with Schwartz falling off the bars, that'll be a 48.875 for Southern Utah. They had a 49.25 last week, which is not far off their season best mark set on January the 15th. And it's a 48.875 as well for Boise State. So the Broncos maintain the lead they built in the first rotation. We'll take a look at some of the best routines and break it all down when we come back inside the AFAC. Boise State, we're halfway done, and the Broncos have got the lead here on the road over Southern Utah. Both schools notching a 48.875 in that second rotation. Boise State was on the vault, Southern Utah was on the bars. We'll move to the third rotation in a few minutes. The Thunderbirds will be on beam, which has been an up and down affair so far this year, and Boise State will be on the floor, where they've been very strong. But going back to that second rotation, when you look at the top routines from that rotation, Courtney Blackson's vault stands out in a big way.
Oh, 100%. I was speechless watching it, if you couldn't hear. Just absolute perfection, truly. Like, that is how you want to do a 1.5 vaults. And she did it perfectly. And just to end on such a high note, too, just like she did on bars, is exactly why she's in the anchor spot for both of those events.
And we've seen a lot of really good, powerful vaults with great distance, with great amplitude, but no landing has really even come close to what Blackson was able to accomplish right there.
Yeah, we were talking about it in the break, just like a lawn dart, just she knew where her landing was, and it was just like she stopped, and it was amazing. And like you said, no other vault landing has looked quite like that, and that's what gymnasts are shooting for in their vaults.
So Southern Utah and Boise State both with the 48.875. There were a pair of 9.85 routines from Southern Utah. Bella Neff and Nia Randolph both really, really solid in the middle of that lineup for Southern Utah.
And if you watch both of their routines, you see very similar things. You see hit handstands, you see clean lines, and pretty solid landings. I know they had little hops, but that's what judges are looking for on bars. So hit handstands, clean lines, legs together, toes pointed, and a hit landing.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get you ready for the next rotation. Back in a moment.
Longtime supporters of Southern Utah University.
The most impressive thing we have seen so far tonight, and Boise State's had some great scores.
You can see just straight body, finds her landing, holds it. I mean, who wouldn't? You just landed a 1.5 10-0 start value vault. You should hold that, celebrate, because that was just gorgeous.
And she is having one heck of a night. A 9.95 on her vault, a 9.925. A 9.925 it was for Blackson on her bars routine. She'll compete on the floor in this third rotation, where she's the reigning Mountain West floor specialist of the week. But Bella Neff, little step there at the end, but everything before that was really, really good.
Just really gorgeous. Just focusing on her lines. Again, like I said, toe point all the way extended, knees locked, hitting her handstands, just no questions asked. She is a beautiful bar performer, and it's no wonder she's near the end of that lineup for the Thunderbirds.
Well, this third rotation should be a compelling one. Boise State on floor has been dynamite this year. Top 25 in the country. Last week, a 49.225 from the Broncos in that score in which they notched as a team 196.525, their highest score of the season. Southern Utah will be on the beam in this third rotation, and it has been an adventure to say the least on the balance beam for the Flippin' Birds this year.
I feel like you could say beam is an adventure just in all cases, truly. When you ask non-gymnasts or people who aren't really familiar with the gymnast community, they say beam has got to be the hardest, right? And I mean, I wouldn't say no. It is a tricky event, but the key things that you want to be looking for on beam is no wobbles, staying centered on that beam, and just like you would look for on floor, 180 splits, toes pointed, and control on other things on the events.
This is Alyssa Fernandez starting things off, the reigning MPSF Freshman of the Week.
A really unique acrobatic series. She went side aerial into a back handspring step out. Into a front toss. She's a front side queen, apparently, hitting that aerial and front toss. A little shy on that split, not quite 180, but great control. And you can see these girls up on beam just so calm, so controlled. Now that is so impressive. An aerial into a 1.5 dismount takes so much power. And to stick it, just beautiful. A great exclamation point to a really solid beam routine.
When Southern Utah has had their struggles with their overall team scores this year, oftentimes it's because they've counted 1 or 2 falls on the balance beam. So a strong start there from the freshman, still getting plaudits from her teammates. This is Alyssa Vulaj on the floor.
Floor is generally people's most favorite to watch because you get to hear this fun music, see the gymnast personality come out. And it's always fun to watch the sideline too, because a lot of their teammates are dancing along. Round off 1.5 to a front full, no question on that landing. Already lots of fun energy from this floor routine. Makes me excited to see the rest. Going into what looks like her final pass. Round up back handspring double back. No questions on that finish. Great routine, 2-pass routine from Vulaj.
The junior out of Yorba Linda, California, had just a 9.7 last week, and I'll venture a guess to say she'll be above that here tonight.
I can agree.
And a score just announced, 9.825 for Alyssa Fernandez on the beam. And up next is Kennedy McLean, who had one heck of a beam routine last week up in Logan against Utah State. 9.95, tied for the second best score in Southern Utah history. And we get to see how she follows it up.
And to be able to get that high of a score in an away meet shows a fearsome competitor in the making. So she does a front toss connected to a back handspring step out. And the key to that is getting the connection smoothly. If there's too much time in between the two skills, that will be a deduction or a deduction from the start value. A piked front toss, which is very difficult to do. To get all the way around in the pike position versus the tuck adds a level of difficulty. Toe turn, which can get a lot of gymnasts. That's where a lot of deduction can come from, and she did a great job.
In theory, it's the easiest part.
You would think, yeah. Beautiful dismount. You could see her full go above the beam, which is exactly what the judges are looking for, that height and then control on the landing.
Absolute elation from her teammates. High 10s all around from McLean, the younger sister of Carly McLean. And back over to the floor we go. This is Sydney Leach competing for the first time here tonight. Sophomore out of Irvine, California, who had her lowest score of the season last week on floor. As chants of 10 emanate from the crowd in the Southern Utah sideline, and Leach gets ready to keep things rolling along.
Already like the sound of some Taylor Swift coming through as she's going into her first pass. A really dynamic double pike. A little bit big of a lunge, but still in control. Every gymnast you see will do a leap pass. That's a requirement on the floor exercise. And in some cases, as you saw from Boulage, the level of difficulty you get from your leaps can contribute to just doing 2 passes in your floor routine. So we'll see what Leach here does if she has a 2 or 3 pass floor routine. A front lay, front full. Excellent landing. Looks like she'll be going for another 3rd pass. Finishing with the double back. Just a little bit stuck on that landing, just a little bit under rotation, but got it under control in the end. Really, that looked to be her biggest deduction of the floor routine, so still a solid 2nd routine from Leach.
So up on the beam for Southern Utah is Ellie Cachola, who, like McLean before her last week, notched a 9.950. And that contributed to a 49.375 on the beam for Southern Utah in an event where they have struggled this season. They notched the 4th best all-time record in school history and set an MPSF record in their first year in the conference. It just goes to show you that at any point in time, you can find everything and connect it all at once.
Absolutely. And what you just saw from Cachola was a really long connection, but she does it beautifully, not missing any beats in between her connections. And here she's going into her acrobatic series. Back handspring, step out, layout, step out. What I love about Cachola on beam is she's just so solid. You see her finish her landings, and you just know that she's rock solid up there. Finishing off with the 1.5, just a small step forward, but beautiful routine otherwise.
Well, Cachola just seems to continue to up the ante on the standard that she sets for herself. Someone who's competed for the last couple of years for Southern Utah and has really just become a plug-and-play, reliable high scorer for Coach Bauman. Blake Pascal up on floor here for Boise State, following a 9.8 and a 9.75 from Boulage and Leach.
A little look at the judges is always fun. Going into her first pass. Double back. You could see she was on her toe on that back foot. She wasn't sure how close she was to the line.
She was very close, but I think she stayed inside of it.
She did, because it is a deduction to go outside of those lines. Great lead pass. She has really long lines. Round off 1.5 layout. Something key to watch for in that pass is to have the layout be at the same level or higher than the 1.5. If it's lower, that will be a little bit of a deduction. Finishing out with a front handspring, Rudy to a split jump. And it looked like she just got a little bit of a weird punch angle into the split, but otherwise a good routine.
Well, Southern Utah's 3 scores on the beam as Nia Randolph gets set for her 3rd event of the night. 9.825 from Melissa Fernandez, 9.875 from Kennedy McLean and Ellie Cachola. On the other side, a 9.8 and a 9.875 from Boulage and Leach. We'll see what Pascal gets from the judges as Randolph steps up, but Boise State came into this rotation with the lead. Southern Utah certainly throwing a counterpunch.
Yeah, that's just goes to show that every event, like, there's no guarantee going into an event, no matter if you have the lead or not. You just have to keep hitting your routines. That was a back handspring step out layout, 2 feet, which is a added level of difficulty to the layout step out.
Looked like she did have a little wobble there, but huge to stay on the beam. There will still be a deduction, but nothing compared to what gets taken off if you fall off.
Yes, for sure. A fall is a 5/10 deduction, and depending on what skill you fall on, could be a deduction from their start value. The key thing as a beam competitor is to just move on to the next skill one at a time, because it is one of the longer events and you have a lot of time to get in your head. So just moving next to the next skill is the most important. And a nice stick from Randolph to finish your routine.
That's a strong ending there for the freshman as Southern Utah looks to keep it rolling on the balance beam. And back over to the floor, the sophomore from Mountain Lakes, New Jersey, Emma Loyam.
A round-off whip to double back. Normally you see a back handspring where their hands are on the floor, but she did a whip where her hands were off the floor, which adds difficulty. Lots of great height on those leaps. Like she has one final pass. Double pike, and you can see a beautiful set up into that double pike before she started flipping, which is really good technique. Another 2-pass routine for Boise and a really solid 4th routine from the Broncos.
They're looking to raise their scores compared to what the standard has been for Coach Bird's team on the floor exercise this year. They average 49.2, but so far, Vulage leads the way with their first 3 scores at a 9.8. As we head back over to the beam, in Southern Utah sends Allie Cote, the senior from Plano, Texas, who notched a career best 9.775 a week ago. Second time she's had that score this season.
And I want to say, talking to Coach Bauman, he said it's not very often you see a senior jump into a new lineup, and it just is a testament to Allie's work ethic getting into this lineup. She started off with an acrobatic series, back handspring, step out, layout, step out. Just a little bit forward on her toes on that sheep jump. Side aerial. And now she just has the dismount left. A nice gainer full to a stick, and the Thunderbirds are pumped about that, as they should be.
Well, Coach Bauman was as fired up as he has been all night when Cote nailed the landing. Every score 9.825 and above for Southern Utah. We'll see what Cote gets with Anna Hartley still to go. And back over to the floor, this is Elena McGovern, the junior out of Richmond, Kentucky. 2 straight weeks, a 9.9 on her floor routines, and we'll see what she's got tonight.
Really impressive Rudy to back layout step out. are as toe turns on beam, where those can be where you can get a lot of deductions. But as long as you're ending where you started, not under-rotating your leaps, and have the 180 split, you can pretty much guarantee you won't get a deduction on those. Double back, nice controlled landing, chest up. Great routine. I can see how she's been scoring just consistent 9.9s on that. Really good.
Anna Hartley up as the final beam worker for Southern Utah tonight. In front of her, Ali Kotu has set a new career high with a 9.825. And the Thunderbirds sitting at a 49.225 right now on the beam. They average a 48.585 this season, but the last 2 weeks now, both at 49.225 plus, exactly what Coach Baumann wants to see, especially since he's the beam coach.
Yep. This is exactly the trajectory that he's looking for. Just finding their groove. Nice save. She just dropped her right shoulder just a little bit on that landing, but she stayed on. This is just a really comfortable spot to be in for Hartley, where everyone hit before her. She just has to do her job, focus on one thing at a time, and she'll be great. Another side aerial there. She's finishing up, going into her dismount. The Thunderbirds have been on fire with their beam sticks tonight.
So an excellent third rotation for the Flippin' Birds, and Courtney Blackson, who has done nothing but score at least a 9.925 so far tonight, steps up on floor as the reigning Mountain West floor specialist of the week. She has twice received that honor this year, and last week, Maddie, tied a school record with a 9.95. And she's following a 9.85 from Loyam and a 9.875 from Elena McGovern.
I have full confidence she's going to do what she's done on the last 2 events and just end Boise's rotations with a bang. Front handspring, front double full, front punch, which is an E-level pass. A lot of difficulty.
Looked like she had eyes on the back and side of her head as she stayed inside the corner over there, just beyond the mat.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty intuitive. Spending all that time on the floor, you kind of know where you are in that corner. Really controlled leaps there. A lot of this dancing before the last pass is really important for some rest going into this final pass. Round off, 2.5. So much difficulty in this routine. Nice little mic drop there at the end. She's earned it. A great routine.
3 rotations down, 1 to go. We'll get you the final scores and take you to the 4th when we come back here inside the America First Event Center.
You want to
on 5 from Courtney Blackson. McGovern and Blackson both notched that score to end the rotation strong, and they get a 49.1. Southern Utah with a 49.225 right there. Spencer McLaughlin on hand, Maddie McBride alongside me. Boy, that was a strong rotation from both teams.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when you see 6 hit routines, that's when you know these teams have got it in the bag. They're getting it dialed in, especially this early on in the season. And both teams delivered just really solid routines.
We talked about Southern Utah having had their struggles on the beam this year, but the 4th best score in school history last week, they really carried that momentum over to tonight with a 49-225. That's going to make Coach Bauman very happy.
Definitely, definitely. And like you said, carrying that energy from that season high into this week in a home meet where they may have struggled last home meet is just testament to these girls' like mental power and also their focus.
On the other side for Boise State, we've seen a consistent theme from Coach Bird's lineups here tonight, and that's that they are finishing very, very strong. All of their highest scores tonight individually have come in the final 2 athletes.
Yep. And like I mentioned before, there's strategy in that and getting your strongest competitors to finish out the lineup, because you know that they're going to hit if there's a fall halfway through. And also you know that if the scores are consistent and the 5 hit before, that last routine or those last 2 routines can score really well.
Well, that's the way the Broncos have set things up, and they've done so very successfully. The scores right now, Boise State's got the lead with a 147.225 to Southern Utah's 147.050. The Broncos come into this meet, remember, 32nd in the country. Southern Utah at 36th. Both teams looking to firmly establish themselves inside the top 36 as the season goes along to make it to regionals, which is where both of these programs expect to be and where they both were a year ago. Both did very well at regionals too, and Boise State especially got to the 2nd round and put up good scores.
Yeah, which is not easy to do. The regional format in these last couple years has shifted, and so to be able to compete, to have to compete those 2 days in a row can be really tough, but they did well. They really did.
And they're doing very well tonight. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of those killer routines we saw in the 3rd rotation and take you up to the 4th and final. Back in Cedar City on Overnight right after this. In Southern Utah, both with strong scores, and beginning on the floor before Courtney Blackson closed things off with a 9.875. It was Elena McGovern, but on the beam, Kennedy McLean for Southern Utah. Another fantastic routine for the 2nd straight week.
Definitely, and I mean, following her 9.95 from last week to get a solid 9.875 just shows consistency, which is what you want in any competitor, but especially on beam. Beautiful full dismount, getting high above the beam, just spot on.
And for the Broncos, it was Elena McGovern setting the stage for Blackson on the floor.
She started out with a huge, or finished off, excuse me, with a double tuck. And that's a hard pass to finish off. They make it look really easy. You saw her chest up on the landing and a control on that step. Just leaves no question to the judges.
So as we move into rotation number 4, Boise State with the edge here on the road by 0.175. The margins are quite slim as we come down the stretch. The lineups for Boise State and 5th-year full-time head coach Tina Bird. Vulaj will start things off, followed by Sydney Coe. Emma Loyam will step up to the balance beam, followed by Emily Lopez, Adriana Pop, and Sydney Leach. The sophomore will round things out for Southern Utah on floor, which is what the fans always come to here to the AFEC to see. Alyssa Fernandez first, Taylor Gohl second, Cachola and Christensen in the middle, and Randolph and Pardue will round things out for the Flippin' Birds here tonight.
As Spencer was saying, the margin between the teams and the closeness of the team scores, it really just comes down to the little things. It comes down to a step on the landing, it comes down to a hit handstand, it comes down to a 180 leap. So it really is the small things that you're drilling in practice over and over, because when it comes down to this, it could be, you know, winning or losing. Really interesting series there with a gainer backhand spring to a layout step out. Not a skill you see very often. Another gainer to a layout step out. Just looking really comfortable and confident up there.
This is Alyssa Vulaj up competing for the 3rd consecutive rotation. Has had some solid scores tonight and on her way right now to another one for the Broncos as they look for a road victory and a good score in the middle part of this season.
She just has her her dismount to round out this routine. One and a half. Little hop forward. Again, you see there she held her heels together at the end, which is a new requirement all across the NCAA. So you'll see that often on vault, bars, and beam.
Alyssa Fernandez up first on the floor for Southern Utah.
You can see all the other SUU gymnasts there on the side, dancing along. Round up back handspring double back. Nice landing there. Pretty good control on those leaps. Round off 1.5 front layout. Really well done. A little involvement of the crowd there is always fun. Going into her final pass. A front punch Rudy, 1.5 twist. Really well done for Fernandez on that floor routine.
Well, early in her young career, the best score she's notched on a floor routine so far, a 9.8. She's done it 3 times this year. Had done it 3 straight weeks before, 9.775 last week. She might have a new career best score right there.
I would believe it. Just the makings, again, of another solid, consistent competitor. And to see that from a freshman is exciting.
One of 12 freshmen. Coach Bauman and the staff very excited about this signing class as we're back over to the beam. The sophomore Sydney Coe is up for Boise State.
Very nice series. Back handspring step out to a layout. Just no questions asked. It is more difficult to land with 2 feet on the beam at once than it is the step out one at a time. So that adds difficulty there. She did have a pretty good wobble on the toe turn. As I said, that's sometimes where it can get you, is on that toe turn. She is going into her dismount. Round off 1.5. Little hop on the landing and just that tiny bobble on the toe turn, but otherwise you can tell that when this girl hits, she hits. Very solid.
Reminds me a lot of her older sister, Caitlin Coe, who they called Cash Money, with the power that she demonstrates as a gymnast.
A very powerful gymnast, for sure.
Even 9.8s on the board in the first go around for each team. Fernandez a 9.8 on floor, Vulaj a 9.8 on beam for Boise State, and up steps Kayla Pardue. Speaking of powerful gymnasts,
yes.
Kayla Pardue exemplifies that.
For sure. And she has a unique pass. She goes round off double tuck. And I believe we saw one of those from Boise, but normally you see a round off back handspring into the double back. And she just took out the back handspring, which takes so much power. Front layout, front full. Nice control there. Just watching from her performance so far, this just looks easy for her. off double pike. Just over-rotated it a little bit, falling backwards. So that'll be a 5/10 deduction.
Yeah, she was looking very strong until that ending, and so the pressure certainly on the final four floor performers for Southern Utah: Cachola, Goal, Christensen, and Randolph. And they actually flipped that order around. Kayla Pardue was originally slated to go 6th. Instead, she goes 2nd there. So we'll see how that moves things around. Goal is in the 4 slot. Cachola is still up next. So a few last-minute lineup changes for Scotty Bauman and the Flippin' Birds, as Emma Loyam, who had a great floor routine, is up here on the beam. Notched the 9.925 rather on beam against Southern Utah last year.
She did a triple series there, a back handspring step out, layout, step out, layout, step out. And I don't think I have to tell you how difficult that is. She did it beautifully. And that, of course, adds a lot of difficulty to her routine and to her start value. Good side aerial. You could see she started to lift that toe up a little bit, just caught on the edge of the beam, but she did manage to save it and stay on. Interesting combination into a dismount. You don't normally see someone do their leaps right into their dismount. She had a little bit of a stumble on that landing, but she did stay on, which is clearly what we want from a beam routine.
And why don't you typically see the leaps into the dismount on the beam?
Usually they just have different combinations of leaps that are standalone by themselves, like if they do a split jump to a split 3/4. And normally those gainer dismounts are just done by themselves. So it's just unique. I just haven't seen very much of it.
Up steps Ellie Cachola, having another excellent night for Southern Utah. In the first rotation on her vault, she had a 9.875, and also had a beam routine of 9.875. Off she goes on floor.
Huge double tuck. Straight into her second pass. Front full, front layout. Cachola is a great person to have at this point in the lineup, especially following a fall, just with all of her experience on this event. Going into that last pass. Punch 1.5. Really great routine from Cachola. Just exactly what you want to see following the fall.
Just what the doctor ordered for Southern Utah. She had some former Flippin' Birds cheering her on down there on the sideline. The MRGC championship team set to receive their rings after the meet tonight. But some truly great former athletes. Rachel Smith down there. Caitlin Coe is in the house as well. Carly McLean watching on. There's a whole lineup of former Flippin' Birds out to support. They're not technically teammates, but it certainly feels that way with the way that the community remains involved and the way that everyone stays connected in this program.
One family, one fight, and that family really is forever.
Here's Emily Lopez. 9.875 last week. Her season high this year, a 9.925. And she does not compete in the all-around, but is a 3-event performer for Boise State, and just a really, really good one.
Yes, you can see just like through the edges of her fingertips, she is just presenting everything. Just the showings of a solid, confident beam performer. So Taylor's an example of like what we were discussing before of a standalone leap combination, where it's not connected into anything, but will still satisfy the leap requirements for the beam routine. Very nice front toss. Very good connection too. Another gainer full dismount. Really good chest up. That's what a lot of judges will be looking for on these beam dismounts is chest up, feet together, stuck landing. And she did it great.
Taylor Goal was originally scheduled to go second. Instead, she goes fourth. Coach Bauman and the assistants, Jamie Weissong, Jeff Richards, trying to find that right combination of lineups. And of their 24 routines this year, 16 of them new across the 4 events.
Taylor starts with a rounded back handspring double pike. Nice controlled landing. And you mentioned that Taylor is in a different position than she was originally slated. That's something coaches will prepare their gymnasts for, just to be ready at a moment's notice to be put in a different spot in the lineup. And she is handling it like a champ. She is going into her final tumbling pass. Back handspring, rounded back handspring, double back. Stunning routine from Goal. She's very excited, as she should be.
And her teammates flooding her with plenty more excitement as well. Students want a 10. It's a high bar.
I know. I think maybe we ought to let them be the judges one of these times.
Just one of these times. Just bring competing student sections. You get to judge one event.
Yeah.
One competitor on one event, whichever one you choose. I wonder what score they'd give somebody.
I like this idea. It would be really fun to commentate.
I think it would. I think it would really be engaging for the fans in attendance.
And a really good learning experience.
Exactly. And see just how hard it is to be one of those judges down there.
Yep.
Of course, they would make it look easy because they would just write down 10 and say, all right, we're good to go.
Hey, we won't know until we try.
Another senior, Adriana Pop. Just 4 seniors on this roster for head coach Tina Bird. A lot of youth for the Broncos going forward. Such a strong program that she's been a part of for the better part of 3 decades. And Pop has had a 9.825 or above in each of her last 3 beam routines. And she follows on the heels of a strong one from Emily Lopez, whose score we're still waiting on. Boise State on the beam so far, 9.8, 9.625, 9.725.
So they will be looking to drop that 9.625. Ooh, gorgeous, gorgeous series. Really difficult. Back handspring, step out, 2-foot back handspring, layouts, 2-foot layout. It's amazing when gymnasts can literally tumble on this 4-inch piece of wood.
You won't see me trying.
Finish up with a good gainer full dismount. The difficulty in that routine was very impressive.
And a solid couple of landings there for the Broncos. Lopez score just came in. So did Taylor Golds for Southern Utah, a pair of 9.875s. So Boise State with the advantage with 2 gymnasts left on floor. This is Brinley Christensen.
Back handspring double tuck. Very well done. round off 1.5 front layout. Beautifully executed, just floated that layout. With this very intense routine, I love it. Nice job on those leaps, getting them all the way around. You see that interaction with the crowd, that was pretty cool. Going into her last pass. Punch front Rudy. Just what the Thunderbirds needed.
So just 2 gymnasts still to go here tonight, and the final score is still very much in doubt. Sydney Leach, the sophomore from Irvine, California, had a career best 9.825 last week on the balance beam, getting set to step up for Boise State, who are looking to drop that 9.625. Christensen should have a solid score, and that'll leave it up to Nia Randolph to drop the 9.125 for the Flippin' Birds on floor. But Leach is up first, the final Boise State gymnast to go here tonight, following a 9.775 from Adriana Pop.
She is in a comfortable position where all the gymnasts before her have hit. But that being said, they still do want to drop that 9.625. A back handspring step out to a layout step out. Looked to be just a little bit piked, but a common series for the Broncos. Nice leap combination. I feel like that's where you can see the most diversity on beam is in those leap passes, because you can start in any direction, forward or sideways on the beam, and turn as much as you want. Front toss to a beat jump. Smooth connection there. Oh, another leap into a dismount. A switch jump, a switch leap into a gainer pike. Pretty cool.
So Boise State's gymnasts all done tonight. You see Brinley Christensen with a 9.825 for the Flippin' Birds, and it's all up to Nia Randolph, the do-it-all freshman, once again, as she has in every meet so far this year, competing in the all-around, and off she goes.
With a double lay, no easy feat, an E-level skill, probably one of the most difficult tumbling passes to execute. And as a freshman too, just so much power and skill. Nice leaps, got her full rotation. She's just having fun out there. It's always so fun to watch. She goes into her last pass. Front tuck step out, round up back handspring, double back. And she stays on her feet. A mic drop for the Flippin' Birds to end out their floor rotation.
She nailed it, and she knew it. We'll await the score from Nia Randolph, and we'll see what Boise State gets out of the 6th slot from Sydney Leach. As well, we'll tally it all up in Cedar City when we come back. Let's pay off as Nia Randolph closes with a 9.9, a career best floor routine for the young freshman. And as the scores currently stand, that is enough to put Southern Utah over the hump. Alongside Maddie McBride, Spencer McLaughlin on hand. We've seen some great gymnastics here tonight, and it looks like it literally came down to the final performer.
Oh, it really did. And that's what makes these meets so fun, because these teams are so evenly matched. It truly does just come down to the last event, to the last gymnast, to the last tumbling pass, which is just makes it so exciting.
Nia Randolph is someone who Coach Bauman has described as a freshman that is mature beyond her years. Compares her to Shai Murakami, a former SUU great, in the way that she stays very even-keeled, but even she couldn't help letting out a little bit of emotion there at the end of that floor routine. She knew she had nailed it. Southern Utah needed her to, and the young freshman delivered.
Oh yeah, after you hit a routine like that, I mean, all you can do is just cheer. Just that feeling of joy that just rushes through you is so fun, and she deserved it.
Both of these teams coming off of season high meets in terms of their total team score a week ago, and both are over 196 once again, which is where these programs and teams expect to be that are regulars in the NCAA regionals year in and year out. Southern Utah with a 196.8 last week. The live stats are showing a 196.275. They'll be tallying the scores at some point in here. Nothing official yet. We'll see if any challenges come from either of the coaches. But Southern Utah looks to have gotten out of here with a home victory. And if that does indeed end up being the case, has to make the Flippin' Birds very happy after losing in a tri-meet where they scored under 196 against Arizona State and Utah State. This is what they expect to put on in front of their home fans.
Definitely. And I mean, that 196 score that they got is really what they should be proud of. Obviously, a win feels really good, but improving those scores from meet to meet is really what the coaches are looking for.
As Southern Utah came into this meet 36th in the country on the road to nationals. Boise State at 32nd. They did very well on the road. Right now there's a ring ceremony taking place for the 2023 MRGC champion Southern Utah team. They're getting their rings for that championship season. Boise State took third here inside the AFEC at those what ended up being the final MRGC championships a year ago. Southern Utah took first with a 196.875. Neither team is in that sort of range here tonight, but as you said, these are scores that you want to see in the middle of the year to build upon going forward and also contribute to your NQS.
Absolutely. And Scotty's mentioned multiple times that, you know, you don't want to score too high too soon. You kind of want to just be even-keeled as you go throughout the season, and that's exactly what the Flippin' Birds are slated to do.
Well, the only gymnast competing in the all-around here tonight, once again, Nia Randolph. And Coach Bauman, one thing that he says about the young freshman is she has the opportunity and the talent to break all of the all-around records at Southern Utah, which have stood for a long time with greats like Elise Wheeler and Carly McLean most recently. And Carly McLean just got a large ovation getting her ring, and she gives a hug to SUU President Mindy Benson. But it's high praise for the young freshman, Nia Randolph. She's absolutely deserving of it.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, as a freshman to come out to compete 4 events and to just have such consistent scores already is the telling of a great competitor in the future.
So all the former Thunderbirds and the current Thunderbirds from last year's team getting their rings. Shai Murakami, who Nia Randolph rather gets compared to, as I mentioned earlier, by the coaching staff, received her ring just a moment ago, and this has become such an impressive program. Scotty Bauman's been here for over 3 decades. He took over in a different century, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And I think that for him to have taken over a program in which the average score was about 182, to raise it to where it is now, a perennial top 25, preseason top 24 program again this year. He's done a remarkable job and just a fixture at this university.
Absolutely, and this community just loves this sport, these athletes, this team, and Scott and Jamie and Jeff are just big parts of creating such a wonderful community around this sport.
They've done a great job of fostering an environment that comes out to support this team consistently. We saw that once again here tonight as Southern Utah looks to have gotten the win. We'll step aside. When we come back, we'll check out a couple of replays, and we should be able to tally the final scores, wrapping things up right after this on Overnight. With a team-high 9.875, and that wasn't quite enough as Boise State was outdone by Southern Utah in that final rotation, but Lopez's beam routine really, really solid.
Really solid, and just a solid competitor of the night. I believe she hit all of her routines, really solid. And again, like you said, just not quite enough. It really comes down to those hops on the landings, little bobbles on beam. It's just the little things.
Well, let's go get our scores from the PA announcer as Southern Utah looks to have the win, but it'll be official here momentarily.
9.875 from SUU, Ellie Cachola. And first place on the vault from Boise State with a 9.95, Courtney Blackson. In a tie for third place with 9.85 from SUU, Bella Neff and Naya Randolph. In second place on the bars with a 9.925 from Boise State, Courtney Blackson. And your champion tonight on the uneven bars with a 9.95 from Boise State, Emily Lopez. On the balance beam, there's a three-way tie for first place. All with 9.875s from Boise State, Emily Lopez. From SUU, Ellie Cachola and Kennedy McLean. And on the floor exercise, a three-way tie for second place with 9.875 from Boise State, Courtney Blackson. Also from Boise State, Elena McGovern. And from SUU, Taylor Gull. And your floor exercise champion tonight with a 9.9 from SUU, Naya Randolph. In first place in the overall, in the all-around with a 39.325 from SUU, Naya Randolph.
That matches a career high in the all-around for young Naya Randolph, 39.325.
And their team results with a 196.125 in second place, Boise State. And tonight's winners with a 196.275, your SUU Thunderbirds.
Now, the moment the fans have been waiting for, it's official. Southern Utah prevails, 196.275 to 196.125. A late fourth rotation surge in which the Thunderbirds go for a 49.225 on the floor, a season high on the floor exercise. Boise State with a 48.9 on the balance beam, and Southern Utah just pulls away at the end. Stick around for the post-meet wrap-up, though. Scotty Bauman, head coach for Southern Utah, will join us as his Thunderbirds get the win and put up a quality score. But Maddie, closing thoughts.
Just a great meet. Love watching these gymnasts compete, especially such a close competition to the last rotation. And just great scores for both teams. 196s, exactly where they want to be at this point in the season, so both teams should be very pleased with themselves.
Still plenty more to come your way from Cedar City. We'll be back with the head coach of Southern Utah after this. One final look at that floor routine from Naya Randolph.
Just a solid competitor.
Rejoicing for the Thunderbirds as they get the win over Boise State. Back inside the America First Event Center, Spencer McLaughlin with you, Maddie McBride alongside me. These two teams will square off once again in a week. Former MRGC foes, very familiar with one another, but Southern Utah bucks the trend of last year's regular season meetings in which the road team won both times. Flippin' Birds get the win at home, and after opening the season with a loss in a tri-meet, this is certainly exactly what they were looking for.
It definitely builds momentum, especially at this point in the season where you want to start to see consistency in those lineups and not having to shift things around too much anymore, and just, again, building that confidence as they go towards forward in the season, especially going into away meet next week.
And you mentioned shifting the lineups around. They have 16 new routines compared to last year's team, so they're still trying to find the Southern Utah coaching staff the right connection, the right formula, and there was a late shift there in the floor exercise lineup. They had planned to go one way. They moved a couple of names around. They put Randolph in the anchor spot. That paid off in a big way. It has to just not just give the gymnasts a lot of confidence, but the coaches confidence as well in what they are doing and the process they're committed to.
Yeah, it shows flexibility on the part of the gymnasts to, one, be able to do that on such a short notice. I mean, they probably know minutes beforehand, right? This isn't something they know before the meet starts. Like, this happens during floor rotation. So it shows flexibility on their part, and it shows the coaches, hey, this gymnast can perform at this point in the lineup and this point in the lineup. So they have more options for this gymnast to work with in the future.
And on the beam, Southern Utah with another strong outing here tonight. That perhaps has to be the biggest point of confidence going forward, as that's been their biggest area of struggle throughout the course of this year. But fourth highest score on the balance beam in team history last week, 49.225 here tonight. If that remains consistent, especially, the other three rotations for Southern Utah look very strong.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like Southern Utah has hit the sweet spot in their lineups for beam. They have had pretty consistent competitors all season, just minor tweaks here and there, but it seems like they've got a really good thing going.
Well, let's take a look at some of the best individual performances that we saw tonight, and there were a lot of great ones. This on the beam from Emily Lopez was the highest score in the fourth rotation for the Broncos.
Just really good presentation in everything that she does up there. The Broncos had a lot of stuck landings tonight, both on bars and beam, which is something that you want just in general in gymnastics, especially college gymnastics, where everything is just shooting for perfection.
And on the floor, it was Nia Randolph. This final pass brought home the 9-9, a career high on floor for the young freshman.
Again, just can't say enough good things about Nia. She's going to be a fun competitor to watch throughout these years.
Well, Southern Utah gets the win. Coach should be coming up momentarily. We'll take a break, come back, and we'll hear from Scotty Bauman. That's coming your way right after. Coach for this Flip and Burst team, and you were Scotty Bauman, who is down there amidst the paparazzi. Coach just yelled up to ask if he was still needed.
We can do without him for now.
What do you think he told his team after this meet, in which they trailed after each of the first three rotations and came back to get the win after the fourth?
I would think he would just say, you know, to keep this momentum going, and also just to keep nitpicking and getting those little deductions, because clearly this is a 196.18. We've already seen it from them. But just to continue with this momentum and shooting for the 24 out of 24 routines.
Well, we finally found him, so let's get in Scotty Bauman here to the post-game chat to get his thoughts on what we saw tonight. You're like Beetlejuice, man. I got to say your name 3 times. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. All right. Enjoying the win down there, I presume. What did it feel like to get that comeback in the fourth rotation?
It felt, you know what, it felt great. The girls, they struggled in the first 2 rotations. I'm tired, everybody. I just ran up those stairs.
There are a lot of stairs. I can attest to that. I mean, Kung Fu Panda was 100% right. Stairs are exhausting.
I love that show. Yeah, I was really proud, particularly on beam with Anna and Allie at the end. They needed to hit those routines for us, and they did such a great job. So proud of all 6 of them. And then our floor team, we kind of switched it up a little bit today, and maybe moving Kayla Pardue early was not probably the best move, but we're learning things every day with this team as we go, and that's what we're trying to do. So I'm so impressed with how they stuck with it. We were down the entire meet, man. Boise State was very strong. And I was really proud of the girls, how they kind of stuck to it. And we know we have a great floor and beam team, so I wasn't worried too much about it. All we wanted to do was hit those events, and they did such a great job. I'm so proud of them. And Boise State looked great too, so.
You had that late lineup shift compared to what you'd expected to come into tonight on the floor in that final rotation, and you moved the freshman Nia Randolph into that final slot. She delivers with a 9-9. That puts your team over the hump for the win. What went into that decision for you?
We've been trying to figure out how to move Nia further back on the lineup anyway. We've been trying to just kind of maneuver the lineup a little bit to see who could step in and work on building your scores through the lineup, and that's what you really try to do when you're constructing these lineups. And I got to stop saying lineups, but the girls, Nia should be at that anchor spot, at the 5th or 6th spot, and we were going to go with a full in out of Kayla Pardue on the 6th spot, but she just didn't warm it up very good, so we just went conservative, and we probably paid a price for that.
196.275 on the heels of your best outing of the season with a 196.8. How are you feeling about your team at this point in the season, right about at the midway point?
I'm so happy with what these ladies are doing. They are the most important thing that we do right now is hit our routines. We just, you can't count falls, and that'll destroy you. And you know, as long as we keep hitting 23 out of the 24 routines, we're going to be just fine. And I like that. The girls have done a great job watching, you know, having Aubrey, we had 2 falls tonight. So Aubrey fell on bars and then Kayla did on floor. And, you know, and Aubrey falling off bars, that's not going to happen very often. She's figuring some stuff out, and when that kid comes back on fire, she's going to be one of the best athletes out there. So I'm not too worried about her.
Well, Southern Utah head coach Scotty Bauman, thanks for hustling up the stairs and making time for us here on the post-game chat. I'll let you go catch your breath and celebrate with your team on the win. Congrats, Coach.
Thanks, Spencer.
That'll do it for us tonight here from Cedar City. For our fantastic production crew and my outstanding analyst, Maddie McBride, I'm Spencer McLaughlin saying so long. Southern Utah gets the win over Boise State, 196.275 to 196.150. So long, everybody. We'll see you next time, whenever and wherever that may be. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your night.